We've been in so many meetings with financial clients over the last 20 years, and they're really great at advertising on TV, sponsorships, etc. The problem they have is they're like, our awareness numbers are great, our conversion numbers are good, but when we measure our consideration numbers, we fall behind almost all our competitors. If 99% is happening in the mid-funnel, but you're not there, then what did you expect? It's this gap between, I'm really great at advertising on the upper funnel, I'm really great at asking you to apply now down below, but I got nothing for you in the middle.
Right now, and probably for another decade, there's a huge opportunity to differentiate the brand and differentiate the strategy and differentiate the return on investment, because that's where the consumers are, but it's where the brands aren't even showing up. Or at the very least, they're showing up way insufficiently. For a couple of guys who barely graduated college, we've had a really nice run at working in some of the most influential brands in financial services. Bank of America, Wells Fargo, American Express, Golden One, Discover, Capital One, Fannie Mae, Allianz. We've been knee-deep with these brands for a couple of decades. And I'd love to really deep dive into that because there are massive opportunities to fundamentally improve marketing in financial services. And if you're listening to the podcast and you don't work in financial services, I think the lessons are the same for any high consideration category. Cars, vacations, healthcare, business-to-business software, electronics, appliances, etc. And when you talk about financial services, one of the concepts you've introduced me to, Jordan, that I love is what you call the indisputable truth. It's a way of really simplifying things down to something that is absolutely paramount to success. And in financial services, there's two indisputable truths. There's one on the brand side, and there's one on the customer side. And the indisputable truth on the brand side is that financial service brands are largely undifferentiated. If you look at their logos, if you look at their colors, they're almost all exactly the same, which really isn't that big a deal, but it's emblematic of a bigger issue, which is the totality of their marketing strategies are largely the same. They spend tons of money at the top of the funnel, desperately seeking attention. You see it in insurance, for example. And they try to differentiate by having a different goofy character, a different sophomoric message, a different color. So one might be red and one might be yellow, but they're largely trying the same techniques, desperately seeking attention, desperately trying to get their brand name into your head. And then they largely ignore the entire journey that the audience goes through. And then they try to hit people over and over and over again at the bottom of the funnel, trying to get them to click here and buy now. And if you run the math on this, we know that the typical journey to buy a financial product is somewhere in that 10 to 20 hour range for consumers. And if you look at business to business financial services, that can be an 18-month sales cycle with literally hundreds and hundreds of hours invested collectively by a team. So just anchoring at the top of the funnel and at the bottom of the funnel leaves literally, the math of it is over 99% of the journey is underserved by brands.
I completely agree. We've been in so many meetings with financial clients over the last 20 years, and most of them come in with a product-led strategy. So they're really great at advertising on TV, sponsorships, etc. The problem they have is they're like, our awareness numbers are great, our conversion numbers are good, but when we measure our consideration numbers, we fall behind almost all our competitors. If 99% is happening in the mid-funnel, but you're not there, then what did you expect? And so, you have this, we call it the gap, right? It's this gap between, I'm really great at advertising on the upper funnel, I'm really great at asking you to apply now down below, but I got nothing for you in the middle. So many companies just get this wrong. And I think today, every time we wake up in the morning, we are thrust into a mid-funnel environment. You pick up your phone And whether you're on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, email, YouTube, it's all mid-funnel. We know so much about you, but we don't do anything about it. So if it's a mid-funnel world and the mid-funnel is made up of emotional advertising and functional advertising, why are we not taking advantage of that? And, that gap that occurs can be closed if you just start to focus on that mid-funnel. And basically, you're just creating a bridge, right? You're allowing people that bridge to say, okay, I'm aware of your brand. I'm going to put you in my consideration set. Can you tell me a little bit more? Can you bring me down the journey as we start to move through to conversion? And I think that's the huge opportunity.
Yeah, and in the metrics bear it out because almost every brand, their brand metrics look the same. If you look at their aided recall, very strong, 90% or more for the major brands. Then you look at their unaided recall, it starts dropping precipitously. But then when you get into what makes us different, what makes us better, the holy grail metric of trust, it literally falls off the floor. And financial service firms should understand this maybe better than any other category because it's filled with math people. And the opportunity is to create leverage. If everybody has the same techniques with goofy characters or B2B conferences or download the white paper and give me your email address and I'll follow up over email over and over and over again. If everybody's doing the same thing, how are you going to create any leverage? And then everybody's ignoring that mid-funnel. So right now, and probably for another decade, there's a huge opportunity to differentiate the brand and differentiate the strategy and differentiate the return on investment because that's where the consumers are, but it's where the brands aren't even showing up. Or at the very least, they're showing up way insufficiently.
You can't say you're advertising in social if you're just repurposing your TV spot. I call bullshit on that. That is not mid-funnel, right? All you're doing is making my thumb act even quicker to skip your ad. Financial brands, they need to take into account that all of these different platforms are slightly different. And yes, you have a lot of data about the person, but also your ad formats can change. They don't have to be the same brand spot that you ran on TV, on social. Just take a look around. Your toolbox as a marketer and your permission to play a little bit differently in these social feeds is there for you to embrace things like obviously creator content. Sure, we all know about that. Most financial brands are not embracing creator content. I think they're missing out on a huge opportunity. And don't just do it once and tell me it didn't work. No. Go out and contract and commit to 6 months, commit to a year of doing this. The analytics have gotten better. The tools and the measurement have gotten better. Instagram and TikTok realize that if you're going to go invest in creators, you need better measurement. You need a better way to tie. If somebody saw this on a creator's feed, was there an implication to some sort of purchase down the road? And they can do that now. And we've seen incredible success. There's other formats like you could create branded content that emulates a lot of what you might see through upstarts. So you're seeing the brand basically create what looks to be creator content, but it's not. It's usually a spokesperson, but they're in a casual setting talking about a casual experience and how the brand solved their problem. And it feels real. It feels authentic to the platform. And here's the thing. It's not going to get skipped like your TV commercial is if you repurpose it. Let's just let that sink in. You're going to have a much better video completion rate if you just start to embrace the native aspects of these different channels. And I know that might sound scary, but if you can go to your C-suite or your boss and say, hey, look, we put a test out that did this and we had better conversion metrics across the board and engagement metrics when we did this, I think the light bulbs will go off. And what'll happen is I think the rules will start to loosen a little bit in these organizations and saying, okay, style guides will actually end up starting to change also. Right now, it's like, here are your colors, here's your imagery, that's it. I'm waiting for style guides to actually talk about here's how we're going to shoot creators. Here's how we're going to do branded content on these different platforms. That's obviously, I think, a year or two away, but it's coming. and it's going to change the landscape of how brands communicate and engage with consumers for the better, and it's going to help their metrics across the board.
I love that you're coming back to the word content over and over again. And that's something that honestly you and I struggle with. Is it an ad? Is it content? I prefer the word content because I think that's what people want, which is give me the content that's going to move my life forward. Inspire me, educate me, inform me, don't interrupt the journey, carry me through the journey. We can call it ads, we can call it content. It's irrelevant, but when we get married to the concept of repeating that same message over and over and over again, there's lack of differentiation, there's lack of leverage in there. And ultimately, I think what we really need to be thinking about is a content world that sits on top of ad platforms. Google/YouTube, Meta with Instagram and Facebook, they've got this incredible ability where you can create a high volume of content and then really, truly fulfill upon this concept of delivering the right content at the right place at the right time. And by the way, that's not only for B2C financial services. B2B brands can play really effectively in these consumer channels, and sometimes even more effectively because they're getting such a strong share of voice. But now that leads me over to the second indisputable truth, and this is on the human side. If the brand side is that most of their tactics and techniques and strategies are completely undifferentiated, on the consumer side, the indisputable truth is it's almost impossible to get somebody to change their financial service provider unless they have a life stage change. They graduate college, they graduate grad school, they get married, they get divorced, they move across country, they get a new job, they start their own company. All of those triggers send data signals that say, I'm in market, I've got very specific needs. And one of the things you've talked about before, even on this show, is the 95-5 rule. And if I understand it correctly, it basically means that only about 5% of the time is your audience in market. So there's nothing wrong with traditional advertising that blankets the airwaves if you're doing it consistently. We're just asking it to do way too much. And what we can actually do is use all of these data signals to invest much more heavily, much more aggressively, and much more, most importantly, efficiently, because you're reaching people very specifically when they're in market. But it's not just the data signals that say they're in market, I've got intent to buy, but there's also data signals that say exactly what they're looking for. Very early in the journey, like any great brand, think about Apple, think about Nike, think about any one of these brands where their brand name alone is more than the GDP of major nations. Core to their playbook has always been inspiration. Everybody wakes up in the morning wanting to be better than they were the day before. And that's not just about athletic gear and motorcycles. Think about it from financial services. Like everybody wants better control. Everybody wants to be much more comfortable. Well, use inspiration to help people envision a better version of themselves through the lens of financial services. Now, that's only a small portion of the journey. The next portion of the journey might be educate people. So whether you're insurance or B2B, help people without even talking about your brand, without even aggressively injecting yourself into the brand, help people to fill upon their actual goals. Because education leads to engagement. Engagement leads to trust. Trust leads to conversions. Conversions leads to lifetime value. But once you've inspired and educated them, then we can actually inform them. What makes your brand and what makes your product different and better than the competition, which comes down to your core value proposition. It comes down to a series of RTBs. It comes down to a series of different messages based upon the intent signals that people share with you through their digital behavior to say, this is the information that I'm looking for. So you can even step back for a second, right? Think about it in classic market research. You've got an A/B test. Version A is what brands are doing right now. Completely undifferentiated, largely using the same techniques, begging for attention with goofy characters or investing heavily in white papers and events. Nothing wrong with that. But then largely ignoring the rest of the journey and then finally trying to use some techniques to get people to convert. That's sample A. Sample B is let's take some of those dollars away from desperately begging for attention and use data to understand what people want. Understand when they're in market, understand what their emotional needs are, understand what their functional needs are, and create the content that's delivered at the right place at the right time. Nobody in their right mind would be like, oh yeah, let's go with sample A. Let's annoy people. Let's waste our dollars. Any brand thinking from a fresh perspective is going to go for the B sample in the A/B test.
I would argue that the funnel has condensed and people are becoming aware, considering and buying products within a single session in social. And I think brands need to capitalize on that. So yes, we're talking about leading somebody down the journey, but a lot of purchases also happen very quickly. You know, you've got platforms like TikTok and Instagram that are creating ads to literally allow people to go through the funnel inside of 30 to 45 seconds. And I think that's really important. That's the way we are now conditioned to think. And we are much more accepting of a funnel or a journey being really, really short and very quick. And I think brands need to understand that and realize that if I don't put the right information in front of them that makes them aware, inspires, gives them the education that they need, and then the ability to buy, then they're going to be out of luck.
I think he's right. I mean, look, dude, I mean, that's the power of data, right?
Yeah.
There's no more powerful tools out there right now from a data perspective than LinkedIn, Meta, Facebook, Instagram, Google / YouTube, even TikTok. Like they're picking up so many signals. To your point, you can truncate that funnel or you can truncate that journey, but it only works when you're fully embracing the data to know when people are actually in market and what their needs are.
You know, we're limited in the financial industry because we just can't use all the same signals and data that other industries can. We are regulated, right? So that's why I love this idea of life events that we can pick up on. There are plenty of signals there. And I think brands need to embrace this, right? And build it into the briefs, because if you reverse the engineer the brief based on what can I use to target, you're going to be in a much better spot. You know, too many briefs come across to us in the financial services section. It's like, here's my target audience. They're this old, this much household income. Here's where they live. I can't use any of that. Let's reverse engineer it and say, I'm going to give you only the data points and signals that I can target you on. And then we're going to start to create segments based off of that. What you'll find is life events rises to the top every time. There are others, but life events becomes one of the most important ways to target for financial industries.
And can you talk about retargeting based upon content consumption and custom audiences?
When we talk about moving somebody down the journey, one of the tools that we have available to us, especially on Instagram and Facebook and some others, is this idea that if I saw your ad, and let's say I saw it for 50%, right, video completion rate, right? You can even do less than that. I can put you into a special audience, right? I can literally create a custom audience and say, these are all the people that watch my ad. So they're aware of it. Heck, if my ad was mid-funnel, they might even be considering it, right? And then I can retarget them with offers or lower down the funnel direct response ads. It is so powerful. But many brands don't do that. They don't take advantage of the custom audiences available to them to say, okay, like we know we're going to sequence them down. And I know that these people saw my ad. So this is the ad I'm going to serve next. That's an incredibly powerful tool that should be used every single day.
Yeah, I'd say it's probably the single most powerful tool in the ad world is our ability to create these custom audiences and tell these sequential stories. So we really aren't repeating the same message, but we're letting those brand stories grow and carry people through their journey. And if we just simplify it, it's the same technology from like 20 years ago. Remember, like you're like shopping for a pair of shoes, then you're checking out a sports score. Next thing you know, you're like, wow, what is this voodoo? Like the pair of shoes is showing up in my banner ad, right? That stuff is commonplace retargeting right now. It's more or less the same technology. You're just retargeting content based upon content consumption. So if they look at content piece A, which happens to be emotional, well, let's not repeat it, but now we can give them content piece B, which happens to be pretty educational. And if they consume that, maybe we can move on to content piece C, which is much more functional. And that's a simplified look because ultimately there might be lots and lots of pieces of content in this very granular world and fragmented world that we live in, but it's the ability to retarget based upon content, giving them the information they're looking for at the right place at the right time.
I love testing. And you've got media testing with different audiences and different signals. But what was really happening, what I think is one of the most important things that's happening right now is brands are finally taking a look at creative testing. And the reason they're doing this are twofold. One is a lot of media planning and buying is becoming automated, right? You go into Facebook and you plug in, here's my conversion goal, here's my budget, here's some of the interest that I'm looking to market to. That's it. Facebook's like, we're going to do the rest. Okay, great. So where's my competitive advantage? It's the creative. The second reason why you're able to do this so proficiently today is there's all of these creative analytic platforms that are rising up. So a creative analytics platform is very different than a media analytics platform. And I think this is critical for marketers. If creative is one of the major levers you can pull, then you need to know things like how many of my ads that converted well had women in it? How many of my ads that converted well had a really good hook rate, right? That captured somebody's attention right off the bat. Hook rate could be, I'm going to explain the problem, right? Right off the bat. And people are going to identify with that problem because they all experience the same thing and I've got them. And now they're going to wait for the answer. That's an example. I can measure all of this stuff now and tabulate it and cross-reference it with these AI-based platforms. Like, I'll give you an example, Motion, Allison.ai, and others, where my media analytics might fall short. My creative analytics now are robust. And I can now make really informed decisions in my creative briefs on how I'm going to go to market based on past learnings. For years, we have just been able to survive with the media reports that are given to us. But now things have changed. But now we have reports that are far more robust and far more insightful down to what we need to know to create better and better creative. So we can beat our best performing benchmark that maybe we set last month, the next month. And this gives marketers incredible power in optimizing the entire message and creative in the journey.
When you look at this core strategy of looking at the world a little bit less like a sales funnel, where you're leaning heavily into awareness and conversion, and pivoting over to a journey-based approach, which very much lives in that mid-funnel experience. Lots and lots of steps, lots of granular moments where people have unmet needs. All of this is even more important in business to business than business to consumer. If you think about consumers, if they go on the journey to buy a financial service, a bank, savings, investments, insurance, and they make the wrong decision, they might be out a few $100. They might be out a few $1,000. Nothing to sniffle at. But on the B2B world, if you're going on the journey, which isn't 10 to 20 hours, it's very often 18 months long. It's very often hundreds of hours invested by the decision maker and hundreds of hours invested by a team of decision influencers. If they make the wrong decision, their career can be in jeopardy. Their job can be in jeopardy. Their ability to have healthcare and feed their children can be in jeopardy. That's how intense some of these B2B decisions are. So when you think about the importance of really understanding that consumer journey and understanding people's emotional and functional needs at every granular step, it's amplified by orders of magnitude when you look at it through the lens of business to business marketing compared to business to consumer marketing.
Yeah, B2B advertising is kind of stuck in the past. And if you look at a complex category where you've got a long sales cycle, you think, well, why are they just putting the same ad in front of them over and over again? Why are they just sponsoring the same golf tournament over and over again? I think that's great. Builds brand. That dialogue between salesperson and target is long and complex and nuanced. And if you build a journey that identifies all of those points to lead somebody down, you'll understand what to put in front of them and when. You'll understand also the different channels that they're using and the way they're communicating. Traditionally you think about journeys just being, just a conversion, but actually right before conversion, that's where the sales cycle is longest for B2B. That's literally where meeting after meeting after meeting, email after email after email is going on for months at a time, right? As you're driving them down and you're building basically messaging ladders, right? That can all be planned out. And you can literally target the most hard to reach customer, we're talking about the CIO, right? Chief investment officer in a financial company. You can literally target them and build that narrative that goes back and forth that might last 4 to 6 months in a journey and create content for every single moment that's needed.
Yeah, because when you think about these business to business brands, they're usually using the same 3 plays in the playbook. They sponsor a golf tournament or get a tent at a golf tournament. They have their own private conference where about 10% of their target audience shows up. And they create white papers and ask people to sign up. And once they sign up, they get jammed into the CRM system and get spammed. All of those techniques work really well. We're just asking them to do way too much because in an 18-month journey, that covers about 3 or 4 days. And what we need to do is create deep, meaningful, enriching content and atomize it, break it up into each key moment in the journey. And when they're ready to deep dive into that content, we'll have the data triggers and have that content available, ultimately turning marketing into a service model.
There have been many instances in our career where, especially in B2B marketing, where the sales cycle consists of a single salesperson. Think about like a seasoned financial salesperson, somebody who makes millions of dollars a year selling hundreds of millions of dollar solutions into these clients. They don't care about the brand. They think they're the brand, right? And what they're learning, thank goodness, is that brand matters and that we can grease that journey with the right brand content, the right functional educational content to make their lives easier. And I think that's where I think the big shift is happening. Before they were the brand, now they're realizing, yes, you're still incredibly important to this whole thing, but we're going to do a heck of a lot more than just sponsor a golf tournament where you can go meet this person. We're going to surround them with an ecosystem of content that's valuable that they're going to seek out. So when they get in front of you, they are already farther down the journey than they've ever been before, and your job becomes that much more efficient.
Yeah, those salespeople are absolutely incredible. They've all been trained. They've honed their skills over decades. But what you're describing is they get to draft off of the brand. They get to draft off of the content, and they get to win before they even get to the meeting. The event might put the prospect into the sales funnel. The meetings might convert, but we can have a much higher engagement rate, meaning we're not losing people through that 18-month cycle, and a much higher conversion rate when they get to that final meeting because you're drafting off all of the content that they've already consumed. By the way, think of it this way. One brand is educating you, inspiring you, informing you. You're investing hours and hours and hours as a business-to-business buyer, ingesting all that information, the right information that you're looking for, answering all those questions at the moment you want them answered. You're in the car, you're on a train, you're at home, you're in the office, you're consuming all that content. Compare that to another brand that's not creating all that content. Maybe they've got a better salesperson just for the sake of saying so. But can you really offset the fact that a brand has already answered all the questions that you have, taken all your fears away, inspired you, removed all the friction? There's nothing more powerful than giving people the information that carries them through their journey.
Yeah, I agree. A lot of these B2B targets, they're looking for a mental shortcut, right? And if you surround them with an ecosystem of content before the salesperson or relationship manager even gets in the room, you are giving them the shortcut around who do I trust, why do I trust them, right? And the credibility to say, okay, I'm going to take the meeting. That's critically important. It's so hard to get the meeting. Why not do everything you can to make sure that that meeting is set up for success?
We see it all the time. Look, you and I watch golf together, and then you see these 30-second spots, and you're interested, and then you see whatever golfer wearing the logo, so you're definitely interested. Very often you'll find yourself coming out of a golf tournament you're watching on TV. You're like, during the ads, I'll go check out this company. What does this company do? Are they talking to me? And then you get to their website, which is only one touch point, leave alone social, CRM, etc. You're like, dude, I don't get it. Like, I don't understand what you offer. What makes you different? What makes you better? Why should I trust you? Why should I value? Do your products actually meet my needs? So those ads and those investments and those sponsorships, they're absolutely fine. They're great. This isn't about the death of advertising. That false eulogy has been written before. It's just that we're asking it to do way too much. We just need to take a little bit of the dollars, a little bit of the focus, a little bit of the resources away from these big campaigns and these big investments and start giving people the right information they need at every granular step in their journey. In a lot of ways, it's a generational shift, right? There's a lot of C-level executives who control the budget, and they were born and raised in more of a traditional world. Digital came along, it created a complete and total revolution, and now we're seeing leaders who were born and raised in that world moving up into the C-suite. And the brands that have these leaders that understand the modern consumer journey, they're capturing heart share, they're capturing mind share, they're capturing market share, and you can see it in their financial performance every single day. I think that's all we got for today. So thanks for joining me on Brand Champions.
Brand Champions is a Questus production. If you enjoy the show, please subscribe and review wherever you tune in. You can submit mailbag questions to brandchampions@questus.com.